Greetings. Welcome to week 6 of our exploration of the letters to the churches in Revelation 2 and 3. This week we're looking at the message to the church in Philadelphia. That is Revelation 3, 7 through 13. First, a little background on Philadelphia. It is a relatively small and young city. I believe the youngest of all of these 7 cities that we are talking about. It was formed as a Greek colony, so trying to Hellenize the area, specifically to share the Greek culture and language with the environment. It's on the border of a couple of provinces and was very successful in spreading the language and culture of Greece. There is a large and influential Jewish community, so there's a comparison to be made here with the church in Smyrna. There were a series of earthquakes in 17 AD. They had destroyed, actually, the city of Sardis, which we talked about last week. But in Philadelphia, it was not one major quake as much as it was a series of small quakes for a long time, which made the entire city feel unstable and made most of the citizens, most of the people who lived there, run for the hills. They would build huts and shelters and whatnot out in the surrounding areas to protect themselves, because when these quakes would come through, these aftershocks would come through, the buildings would split, masonry would fall down, and it was a dangerous place to live. The city was rebuilt thanks to, I think, contributions, but also a break on the taxes from the Roman emperor. It subsequently had been renamed a couple of times in honor of the emperor, but had gone back to Philadelphia by the time of the writing of Revelation. We will see this idea of the earthquakes, this stability or the fear of uncertainty echo through these verses, as well as the idea of a new name. So let's begin reading. This is Revelation 3, beginning in verse 7. And to the angel of the church in Philadelphia write, these are the words of the Holy One, the true One, who has the key of David, who opens and no one will shut, who shuts and no one will open. We are told here of Jesus. This is different than the descriptions of Jesus in the preceding letters. They all drew back on the imagery that was used in Revelation about the stars and the lampstands and things like this, but this is much older imagery, specifically because Philadelphia is dealing with persecution from a section of the Jewish community that had excluded them from meeting in the synagogue and of worshiping God alongside them. And so we have this imagery from the Hebrew Bible, Hebrew scriptures being used here, the words of the Holy One, the true One, and the one who has the key of David. So this is imagery, this is language that would be reserved exclusively for God in the Hebrew scriptures, and here it's being applied to Jesus. Jesus is the Holy One, the true One, and true here meaning reality. So the one in whom we find reality, who has the key, the keeper of the keys has authority over David's city, the messianic promises, and the hope of King David come back. So the hope of the Messiah. All right, continuing on in verse 8. I know your works. Look, I have set before you an open door which no one is able to shut. I think this is probably best understood as a reference to the way that the Christian community had been treated here. They are being invited in. They are being welcomed in, and no one can exclude them. So this is a message of comfort for people who had been excluded. I know that you have but little power, and yet you have kept my word and have not denied my name. Once again, a message of comfort for them. I think there are echoes of the Beatitudes here, that the meek will inherit the earth. We have an image of the people with little power, the people who cannot change their circumstances, but they have been faithful, even in the midst of this powerlessness. So this is a letter that is affirming the oppressed, those without power, those who are humble, and saying, God is saying, I see you, I know your works, keep doing what you're doing, and I will open the doors for you. It goes on from there to talk about those who say they're Jews but are not. They are lying. I will make them come and bow down before your feet, and they will learn that I have loved you. This is imagery or language that is a direct reference to Isaiah 60. Let me make sure that's right. Yeah, Isaiah 60, verse 14. And it is imagery that is used elsewhere in Scripture, that God will vindicate God's people. The people around them have not treated them well. They have been threatened. They have been persecuted. They have been punished. But God sees them, and God will vindicate them. Because you have kept my word of patient endurance, I will keep you from the hour of trial that is coming on the whole world to test the inhabitants of the earth. I am coming soon. Hold fast to what you have so that no one may seize your crown. So we have this imagery of a time of trial. We talked in the Bible study about whether or not this is the end times or if this is something that's happening immediately, to which I would say it's both. When we read Revelation, I think there is a tendency to want to project this on the end of days. But this letter was written to people in very concrete and real circumstances. And so there is trial and there is testing, and these people have been in the midst of it, of this persecution, of exclusion from the synagogue, from the community. And indeed, people are still being persecuted. And I think for us, even if in the Western church, where we're not necessarily being persecuted, there is still the temptation of succumbing to the ideals, the idols of this world. And so there is this idea of it's right now, and it may be to come, but we have the assurance that Jesus is the one that's in control, that the Holy One, the true one, is the one who opens the door for us. And it is in him that we trust and that we have faith and are confident. In verse 12, if you conquer, I will make you a pillar in the temple of my God. You will never go out of it. I will write on you the name of my God and the name of the city of my God, the new Jerusalem that comes down from my God out of heaven, and my own new name. So I will make you a pillar in the temple of my God. That is a permanent fixture. So these people who have been excluded will now not only be included, but will be integrated into the very temple itself. The pillar could also be a reference to the uncertainty of earthquakes, pillars being meant to support and shore up the building. And so and they will never go out of it. So that also might be a reference to the people who had to leave the city of Philadelphia because they were afraid of the buildings falling on them during these aftershocks. And the idea of putting your name on the pillar has numerous implications, numerous ideas, among them that sometimes priests' names would be placed on a pillar after they died to honor them and their service. We have the symbolism of naming in baptism, so to have your name and indeed God's name put on you. given that identity of belonging. That is potentially a reference to baptism, where we are claimed and named as God's children. It's also potentially a reference to the way that wealthy people, people who pay to build buildings, get their names on the buildings. So God saying, "I'll put your name on this pillar," means your work for the kingdom has been noticed, and so it's another way of acknowledging the way they belong in this space. The name of the new city might be a reference to citizenship in said city. And let's go back just a little bit about God's writing God's name on things. Could also be a reference to Numbers 6, the priestly benediction that God gives Aaron to say over the people. The promise there that God says God will write his name on the people and they will be blessed. So it is another form of claiming of belonging for this city of Philadelphia. It is unique because it does not receive condemnation. It is just affirmed in its meekness, but in its faithfulness. So may we also find ourselves in a place where we need to rely on Jesus to open the door for us, and where we are confident of our belonging to God.